It appears that a pattern is repeating for Bitcoin. We've seen this in history, and it has been indicative of some pretty tumultuous times to come. We'll be going over that scenario, and then, of course, what to kind of expect over these next few weeks here, because I do see Bitcoin essentially picking between two major paths. One path that leads towards a market cycle that goes deep into 2025, and another one that does not. Another one that leads into a much more shallow time lived in this cycle. But before we get to that, I should once again let you know that we do have our Christmas sale going on for this week. It's a little bit of a quiet sale right now. The code is ELSA in all capitals. It'll award you 20% off of any one of the programs or services in our Teachable School, which you can find a link to in the description below. And not only that, but the Quant Prime service over here, which allows you to create, test, and automate your trades, that'll actually be 25% off applied to the lifetime of your subscription. So as long as you're subscribed, you get that discount. And again, I look at that as a great tool for already established traders. If you're a little bit newer, perhaps something else is better, or perhaps just the free content on YouTube is actually a good place to start. All right, so let's start off with the actual analysis. So I want to preference this conversation by saying, look, I'm going to show you something here that I think is a possibility, but don't take this as like a one-to-one thing. So back in 2021, Bitcoin topped in, of course, April right here. And there's a very obvious structure going on leading into this top. Bitcoin was in, obviously, a daily uptrend the whole way through, putting in 1, 2, 3 successive highs over the course of about a month and a half, or actually, sorry, about a month and a half, actually, with 1, 2, 3 higher lows the whole way through, leading into, again, that new all-time high. From there, Bitcoin had a very, very sharp correction. This one coming down from top to bottom. This one was like super severe, like 27%. Over the course of, in this case, it was about 9-10 days, and then set up for a very, 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 very nasty bull trap right here. This is something that I remember in 2021 we prepared for, coming off of this break of structure right here, because Bitcoin had, for the first time, put in a lower low on the daily. So that is, as always, a concerning feature, because, well, whenever you have a trend reversal, I mean, it typically starts, if it's an uptrend, with a lower low and then a lower high. So we have a lower low here. And if we go to our current iteration from this year, we can see a lot of similarities here. Again, it doesn't need to be one-to-one. I don't really like fractals, but it does make for some really good, engaging YouTube content for whatever reason. But similar thing right here. 1, 2, 3 successive highs, 1, 2, 3 higher lows. Boom. This last move to the downside has taken out that low number 6 right here, just like this one did over here. This one, obviously, deeper. And I would just say at the outset, I do not expect things to get as severe as what we saw in 2021 by any stretch of the imagination. That's just where I'm at right now. I can be wrong in that, obviously, but I don't think that that's what's happening. And you can see that Bitcoin has been attempting to bounce right here. It's been attempting to kind of, level off, let's call it around $93,500. So I do expect that Bitcoin is likely setting up for a bounce coming in from this region. A lot of other things line up with that. And of course, we want to be aware of where that next major fib would be, or sorry, not the next major fib, but the Fibonacci numbers in which we would expect a trap to occur if there is going to be a trap. So I'm still looking at this as the most likely scenario. Bitcoin very likely begins a rally this week, probably even early this week. And if Bitcoin gets any sort of a major rejection between, let's call it 101 to 105, or I would have to say $105,000, which is fucking crazy. But if it does get a major rejection right there, that is going to be your confirmation of a reversal here on the daily. And while I do think that things would come down further, I don't think that they're going to be as bad as what we see over here. I do think, kind of worst case scenario, we'd see Bitcoin perhaps come down somewhere around mid $80,000 territory. Let's just call it like $85,000, just tentatively right now. It doesn't need to be exactly that, but somewhere around there, between there and like 88, which, would be a pretty large correction here, to be fair. I mean, that's 21%. Remember, this whole cycle, we've seen 20% corrections kind of the whole way through on the major corrective turns. That's been kind of like the flavor of the cycle correction, where which we've seen in the past before as well. Like 2021 had a flavor of the cycle correction as well, which was about, I think, 25 to 30%. The 2017 cycle had 30% corrections as kind of like the flavor of the cycle. Before that, a little bit more as well. So I do suspect that this, is actually very possible happening right here. Again, it will be confirmed, at least in my eyes, if you do see a major rejection somewhere on this next bounce, especially around these numbers right here, about 101 to 105 region, or actually it's technically closer to 102 to 105, in fact. So obviously we'll see that in the upcoming week. I mean, we'll see the attempt at a bounce, in this upcoming week, I suspect. And then the question is, what happens around this region right here? Of course, it could very well be that Bitcoin, maybe backs off a little bit, bases off again at $100,000, puts in, more importantly, a higher low. If you see that, okay, quite bullish. Bitcoin should continue, I suspect, in early January. Thus, the cycle probably going to be a lot shorter if that does happen. But if we go for this more prolonged correction right here, which, let's say tentatively, and more importantly, this is like a time component. If this correction takes us into especially February, March, where Bitcoin is essentially ranging between $100,000 to $80,000, again, not exact numbers, but very, very close. That would make me a little, not a little bit more. That would make me on the side that Bitcoin is going to extend this cycle into deep 2025, and all the people who are looking at the 4-year cycle as still intact are going to be 100% right. So I can now see, a bit of a path forwards here, but it really hinges upon, how Bitcoin reacts. I mean, really over this next couple weeks spread, and how things respond within this region right here, particularly. Moving on from there and going over a little bit why Bitcoin is probably likely to start this bounce today, we do have another example of the Monday setup right here. This strategy is being set up using the Quant Prime service over here. You can set up strategies like this, or really any strategy that you have, in your mind's eye. And this is a very, 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 very simple one. It's all that it's doing is it's longing. It's opening a long at 00 UTC on Monday and then closing that long at 10 a.m. UTC on Tuesday. If you would have done that for the last few years, you would have had these results right here. You would have had just over a 51.5% strike rate, but your profit factor at 1.416. Well, that's going to give you a nice equity curve. It's not the best strategy of all time, but again, you do have a little bit of an asymmetrical return on Mondays particularly. Of course, this goes hand in hand with our price statistics over here. Monday is actually the most likely day not to close positively. That would be actually Sunday right now since 2024 began, but it is the highest average return for positive closing Mondays, with just under 57% of Mondays since 2024 began closing positively. So, this setup right here did officially fire off at 94,335. So if we go back into the strategy tester right here and check out what the average winning trade is, that would be about 3.25 versus the average losing trade, which is about a little bit less than 2.5%. By the way, the last one that we saw led Bitcoin into, the current all-time high. I mean, that was just a fucking week ago, by the way, literally just a week ago. But yeah, looking at it right here, 3.25% from that entry puts Bitcoin where? That puts Bitcoin $97,500. I think that's, fine target for a bounce here. That would actually still even be a lower high on the lower term timeframes. Of course, Bitcoin does choose the southern route, which I don't think that it will, but if it does, 2.5% to the downside puts Bitcoin at $92,000, essentially the low of last week. So that's kind of the areas of interest over this next day, I guess, as 10 a.m. UTC is, just over a day away right now. Anyways, moving on from there, I also did want to follow up on this setup, the 5-day setup, or sorry, actually, no, let's go into something else first. Yes. Okay, let's go back on over here. So also kind of colluding with the idea that Bitcoin probably bounces from this region first before anything else is this sort of a relationship that we documented last week right here, where Bitcoin has been seeing these about 7 to 8 day spreads of upside movements from low to high, followed by about 4 to 5 days of downside movements. The upside moves have been 15%, 15.23, and 15.25% right here. The downside moves have been 9%, 10%, and this past one was 15%. So we do have have a bit of a change of behavior here from this past consolidation. That was an early indication that things are, it's time to be a little more defensive, or at least in the way that I look at things. Now, from here, do we expect another one of these green phases? Probably yes. Over the next, let's say, week. Let's say that this relationship is still, somewhat steady. So that would bring us from the low to, I guess, Friday of this week, somewhere around there is where we kind of expect this rally to, find like a high. So perhaps that is going to be, around the low $100,000 territory. But again, if the timing for the downside moves works out perfectly, that is going to work really, 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 really well with another downside move right here. Now, all of these green phases over the past month and a half now have been about 15%, as we just said, off of the low. So let's just see what would 15% off of our current low look like. That would actually put Bitcoin at 105,800. I don't know if Bitcoin got to 105,800. I'm not going to be looking for rejection. I think that Bitcoin generally just moves up and to the right from there. But again, if we see on this bounce anything less than that, that relationship will also be destroyed, leading further confidence that price does come down here and at least retest these lows, and very likely does move a little bit lower and scare the ever-living shit out of everyone, myself included. But I do suspect that would still be an opportunity. Long term, I don't think that Bitcoin's topped just yet for this cycle. I do still look at especially the weekly volatility metric BBWP here. Whoops, I'm just drawing damn lines. So let me go back on over here. As like a good indication of where we are at in the current cycle. Again, weekly BBWP has thus far hit a high of about 84 percentile. We've never seen a macro cycle top in that region before. We've seen at minimum macro cycle tops coming in around 94 percentile on the weekly BBWP. So there's still, I suspect that there is still likely another move to the upside, and it probably comes after, this current correction. If we do see Bitcoin, however, and I want to really outlay this, but if we do see Bitcoin actually push to new highs from this corrective low here, meaning that there's no major rejection between about 102 to 105 region, we don't see any of this nonsense going on over here to the downside, and Bitcoin just, moves up and to the right, that's going to make me really fucking confident, again, that I think that the timing of this cycle is probably going to end certainly within the first half of 2025 and probably within the first 3 months of 2025. But that's only if Bitcoin literally pushes to new highs, essentially from this base without going lower. If you see that, you're going to hear me fucking sounding the warning bells, in late Q1 of this coming year. Anyways, moving on from there, I did want to revisit the 5-day setup over here. If you're familiar with this, it is again another setup using the Quant Prime service over here. And whoops, where is it? There it is. and a very, very simple setup. Again, you can set up this exact one, or you can set up anything like it, or whatever the fuck your heart desires, really. But this one, very, very simple. Anytime Bitcoin closes above the red 5 exponential moving average on the 5-day time frame, open a long. When it closed below, close that long. If you would have done that throughout the full history of Bitcoin, these are what your stats would have been. Very high profit factor, again, probably due to these early occurrences over here. But even if we get rid of those, it's actually still pretty damn good. And the reason why I bring it up is because, yes, this one did fire off an absolutely epic trade at 62,850. But, and that was like literally fucking 2 months ago now. Yeah, beginning of October, like 2.5 months ago, almost 3 months. Holy shit. Very long trade. But is now in danger of actually closing below really for the first time. And that will officially close this trade if you've been following this one. If Bitcoin closes this next 5-day time frame, which will close on Wednesday night at 96,811. So if you see below there, then this one gets closed, and that actually makes a lot of sense. And I expect that it probably will, because as of right now, if Bitcoin were to actually close below that region, that would close this trade off after 80 days and, about a 55% gain. Okay. Like pretty fucking good. And very comparable to the last 2 mega rallies that we've seen, using this strategy. This one over here taking 70 days and returning about 60, I guess from open to close, probably a little bit less than that. Not as much. Yeah. 53%. So still pretty fucking good. And then this one over here that preceded it just by a few months was an 85-day rally returning about 50% almost. So, it's very much in alignment with these big, massive trending trades, which is what this strategy is really designed to do. So, I look at this as, another indication timing wise, we're probably at the end of this current rally. Bitcoin's probably going to enter into a much more prolonged sideways consolidation, which would imply that we probably see, again, this idea over here play out, something like this. Again, I can be fucking wrong on this 100%, but understand where, that gets destroyed, I guess, and kind of what to look for. Because at the end of the day, there's no way to 100% predict the fucking market. I mean, that's literally impossible. You can't be perfect, but you can have scenarios, you can have invalidations for those, and that's what really does matter. All right, so we got that. We kind of went over price statistics over here, and of course the HPDR. So I wanted to make a note here of the weekly HPDR. The weekly HPDR is showing the median right now crawling up from about $87,000. This is interesting to me because, again, that kind of correlates well with the bottom end of this potential consolidation range. And also, Bitcoin is getting its first open below the 38.2 level, which we have not seen since essentially the rally began in November. So again, another indication that Bitcoin's probably going to correct here. It could trade all the way up to 104, the top side of this current 38.2 range, and still reject from there. It would just be a backfall in the last 5-day dildo. So, I do think that it's a better time to be a little more defensive. Doesn't mean that's going to be 100% right, but as long as Bitcoin is especially below 105, this correction can go on for some time. Of course, on top of that, we can also go check out stochastic momentum. I think the daily does, again, probably bode well with a bounce incoming this week. It is correcting pretty severely here now. We can see that daily stochastic momentum will not turn up today unless Bitcoin closes above 102,500. So probably not happening today, but when it gets in these very, 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 very low regions alongside, price action looking like this, it's probably likely to bounce. So, maybe we do get another run somewhere around the lows, somewhere around $92,000 first. I don't have super strong opinions on this, but my super strong opinion is on there's a bounce coming either from here or a little bit lower, and then that's going to be the real tell for this cycle. It's going to be very, 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 very important, at least to me. But here's the thing, also on the sort of side of a higher term time frame correction, transpiring here for a while, 5-day time frame, 5-day stochastic momentum is coming down here from extreme highs, will remain with downside as long as it's below 103,700. 10-day time frame also going to be freshly crossing down at the end of this next period below $99,000. And weekly time frame, I kind of went in a little bit discombobulated there, but 5-day, 10-day, weekly. But the weekly time frame, also headed down below 105. So, seeing all of these things kind of in conjunction with each other does make me think that Bitcoin is setting up for a much more prolonged sideways consolidation here, which again does bode well for the long term. Even the monthly, by the way, monthly momentum will actually turn down if Bitcoin closed this month below 104. Or sorry, Jesus Christ, where did I get that? $94,000. So again, that would be a little bit more concerning. But of course, we still have another 8 days left for this for this month. So we'll be monitoring that. We'll be keeping an eye on that as this year comes close to an end. Would not want to see the monthly turn down. The lower term timeframes can correct, obviously, while the monthly still remains in an overall upside posture. So that is where we'll end things for today. A little bit longer of a video. I do apologize about that, but a lot of ideas I wanted to get out today, just because I've had the whole weekend to kind of digest the market, and and I've seen a lot of takes across the interwebs. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. Doesn't really matter what about that. But again, this is kind of what I'm looking at, especially over the next, I would say, week to 3 weeks. So yeah, we'll see you later. Again, Bitcoin appears to be trying for the bounce right now, so it probably does bounce from here, and then we'll come back to it tomorrow. As always, it'll be New Year's Eve. No, it'll be Christmas Eve. So that's a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Again, we do have, of course, our sale going on over here. And also, if you find this content valuable, please consider subscribing. We're very, 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 very close to 200,000 subscribers on this channel. And of course, it's just an easy way to get this content in your inbox every day. If you value it. If you don't, then don't fucking subscribe. It's that simple. All right. Wishing you the best. Take care. Much love. And see you hopefully tomorrow.